Good evening. Thank you for joining us on episode 2 of Not Another Cheltenham podcast. Joe is with me once again, and I'm delighted to say that we're joined by the voice of racing himself, Richard Hoiles. Richard, thank you very much for giving us your time.
Pleasure, Adam. No problem at all. It's all good at this stage, isn't it? We're all looking forward. We can all make good cases for horses. None of them got beaten yet. So yeah, good time.
Now, what we will do is we're asking all of our guests, Richard Hall, is how good is your knowledge of horses' antibiotics and how long they take to work?
Well, I was asking, I've just done another podcast actually, and I believe you might have had Jamie Snowden on the other day, and I was trying to use him as the sort of, saying, and he just says, and he's quite right, it's a bit like you and I, how bad your cold. If it's not that bad, you take a bit of antibiotics, or you'd even take antibiotics, you fill yourself full of Lemsip or other cold remedies are available, and you can shake it off. The worry is that, we are clearly talking about a horse that, from a trainer who errs on the side of caution, and that's entirely justifiable. I'm not trying to suggest that that isn't perfectly plausible. And now you're faced with possibly having to make a very bold decision. And I don't know, the tenor of what's come out today makes me think that it's unlikely. Because even if he lines up, they obviously thought he was fine before they sent him for the gallop at Kempton. Otherwise, you wouldn't have done. So as a result, I don't know. In this instance, my sympathies are with them. And I think if he was mine, this would be one I would duck. Would I then regret having ducked some of the early ones in the season? Absolutely. And that's the perils of adopting this sort of policy, I think. But I think for a championship race, you could end up bottoming the horse, giving him a bad experience, and that can change a whole horse's career rather than just missing one race. So sad though it is, I think we won't see him, and they may just be left to rue some of those races that they didn't go for.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are sort of 12 days or so away from the festival, Richard. I mean, as a commentator with hundreds of horses to research and get ready, is there a different approach to a festival day compared to a busy Saturday?
Not particularly. I tend to sort of try and do the same initial prep that I do for every single meeting and just get to that stage where I've been through the runners, I've done, various annotations, but I don't learn them until late, because otherwise, think how many horses Gigginsdown or JP are going to have during the week. There's just no point in trying to put names to colours at that stage, because you'd just as like to muddle them up from one race to the next. So the only slight change to that will probably be, a couple of years ago, you'd pick up the county hurdle field, and even though it's big, you'd think, yeah, I'd probably know 2/3 of those straight off. And there was one particular year when they weren't really sitting, and I was thinking, I'm struggling to learn these. And you realise that 14 of the 26 were Irish. And that is different for me because I don't see them. And obviously, even if you do see them, they're running in different caps quite often every day of the week, depending on whether they're Gigginsdown's first, second, third, fourth, or fifth string, or JP's the same. So that's the only time I might look at a few videos just to see what those colours look like. Not so much the caps, but also looking at the horses. So if JP's got 5, if I can find 2 that have got a white face or something like that, then I begin to relax. If they all look exactly the same, then I begin to panic. But that's probably the only difference to the week, really, is just being aware of the Irish.
Okay, and of the 4 days, which is your favourite?
That's a really good question. In many ways, I think the first, partly because all the talking stopped and the action started, but that build up to the first and the excitement. And my favourite race would still be the Gold Cup. So if you like, it would be the first day, but the favourite race would be on the last. So as a result, that's quite a nice place to be. But the great thing about the Cheltenham Festival is it can throw up races that you don't expect to be memorable. That's the love of it, really. When Faheen battling out that old finish the other year with 3 all favourites suddenly all pop up together, and you're thinking, wow, that was probably my most enjoyable call of the meeting, and I wouldn't have anticipated that happening at the start. So, but I think the first day, in a way, you're off and running as well, which is good. Once the curtains come up, you can begin to tick them off in your head. So yeah, first day, best race though, the Gold Cup.
And what sort of time do you get to the course? Is it an earlier start for Cheltenham? Is it a long day for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with all the big meetings. I'm not going to complain at all, obviously, but the balance or the hard part is just to peak at the right time. You don't want to get caught in traffic on the way in. You don't want to get anything that makes you behind. So I'll be on the track by 9:15. 9:30 at the latest. I'll then walk the course, once old, once new, once cross country. And that's just to remind myself, get some fresh air, try and clear your head. But the hard part is just trying to not live on your nerves from the time you ride around on the course at 10, but just to prepare nice and quietly. That's why I like doing the walk first. Keep yourself away from lots of other people who are going to make you nervous by chatting about all sorts of things that you suddenly feel panic that you should know. But I don't need to know a lot of the background stuff and commentating on what's happening rather than trying to fill it full of facts. So yeah, the idea is to just keep it nice. And it was an interesting thing. I'm a big cricket fan, and obviously Michael Atherton loves his racing. So I spoke to him a few times about 5 or 6 years ago and asked him about that great innings against Alan Donald, when it was 9 3/4 hours, I think he batted to save a test match in South Africa. And something he said really stuck with me, and that's that. So I said to him, how do you concentrate for that length of time? And he says, but I don't. When the bowler's halfway up, broken into his run up, then I'm concentrating. And by the time he delivers the ball, I'm fully focused. And then, I've left it go down the off stumps and he taking my head off. But then I'm walking off to square leg and thinking about the kids or thinking about what I might have to eat tonight. And then I walk back and do it. So, you're saying for that 9 hours, he reckoned he only concentrated fully for like an hour and 10 minutes. And that's always stuck with me. You're on course for 7 or 8 hours, but you just want to peak at the right time, rather than still be half asleep when they're at the post for the county hurdle or something like that. So just try and keep yourself to yourself and out of the way, really.
And before we get on to this year's festival, what would you say are the top 3 races you've called home so far at Cheltenham?
At Cheltenham, I know what number 1 will be, so I'll save that till last. Probably will be the most interesting ones. One that did me a lot of good was Might Bite versus Whisper. When White Bite goes walkabout. That was my first year as ITV commentator, and I'm massive friends with Simon Holt, massive admirer of him, and they're big shoes to fill, but you've got to fill them in your own way if you like. But it takes a while to have the confidence, and I've been a bit rushed day one. And that, you can't script those sort of finishes. And if you can find the right words in those circumstances, you can have a lot of confidence that that's fine. And so as a result, that just occurred at the right time, probably gave me, say a bit of confidence that, yeah, you can do it. You just need to relax and let the words come into your head rather than be too keen and anxious to get on with things. I think Honeysuckle's win last year was right up there, to be honest. I think that was just such a fantastic setup, if you like, for her to come and win after it looked unlikely for half the season. And that's a partnership that, over the previous 4 or 5 years had really developed in National Hunt Racing with her and Rachel Blackmore. So I think that acceleration after the last and knowing she was going to get there, and the scenes afterwards were, brilliant. But Deadman's Gold Cup remains, the one really. ITV job's really good, but you don't get the interaction with the crowd because they're not listening to you. You're picking up off them, and but that final circuit was the biggest buzz I think I'd ever get off a crowd response and a crowd reaction, and something you've just said that is pretty innocuous, which was Demon's got him at it, and the whole place just went nuts. And I'm thinking, whoa, we're miles out here. I can't, I'm going to be shouting and screaming. You're all going to be, so you just fed it in gradually, with a little word here and a little word there. And it was brilliant. They reacted to every twist and turn, and they were also invested in it. It wasn't the best race in the world, but it just felt like, and once you do relax in those sort of things, I still remember words coming in, I don't know when I suddenly thought it reminded me of a boxing match, but somewhere along the lines that cropped into my head. And then you're thinking, okay, I've thought of a word, I'll keep that, push it to one side. And I can still remember the clarity of thought process in that final circuit whilst everyone else is going nuts. And that doesn't happen very often, to be honest. I think most of the time just struggling to get a sentence out. But there I was able to pick words and think, I'll keep that, save that, use that later, and yeah, probably of all my commentaries, it's not about the commentary, it's about finding words that match what's going on. And that probably is the one that's most embedded in lots of people's mind, and certainly is for me, for the reaction of the crowd.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take you through but the Wednesday and Friday of this year and looking at some of the races with you. And I guess we'll start on the Wednesday with what can only be described as the latest round of Willie Mullins bingo with the Bearing Bingham. I mean, it's I've written a few previews. I've done a few preview shows. We've had lots of chats, and I'm absolutely clueless as to what would turn up here and what Willie's thinking. I don't think anyone really knows. What are your thoughts on the Bearing Bingham?
Well, I think probably most people would feel that Ballyburn is the best novice hurdler we've seen out of Ireland. So does he go for the Supreme or does he go for the Bearing Bingham? I just literally come off another podcast where a lot was made of the fact that Willie will want to nail down the first race. He hasn't always made the best start to the festival, actually, over preceding years. And so, would you rely enough on his other options like Tully Hill in the opener, or would you just want to, get one under your belt? From a betting point of view, you can't approach the race, obviously, until you know where Ballyburn is going. As regards the other horses, well, again, you've got, Il Atlantique, reading Tommy wrong, who may also go for the Albert Bartlett. So lots of question marks. There's just one horse there that may or may not be declared, but a horse called Jinko Blue of Nicky Henderson's got put up a stone for winning a handicap at Sandown, and now actually has a mark of 140. And as regards an each way perspective, that's not a million miles off. Gidley Park's only is 138, and okay, Gidley Park could rate higher possibly, but he's an interesting runner if he turns up at a big price. But I'd like to see Ballyburn in the other division if that was going to be the case. So yeah, you're quite right. Which Willie Mullins we're going to see is going to be important. And I would love Billericay Dicky to run well, just because those of us that remember the song by Ian Jury, which is definitely non-PC these days, would just love to be able to shout Billericay Dicky. He's doing very well up the run. Cheltenham would be fantastic if you know the song.
I have heard the song. What I'd also recommend as someone who loves French racing is to watch the debut run that he had at Chateaubriand on the flat. And if you can watch it on the Akidia stream, I'm a particular fan of the pronunciation Billericay Decay, which was just fantastic. It goes really well if you want a French flavour to go on there. Whether he's good enough to win it after one run, I'm not so sure. Joe, any thoughts?
Oh, just as confusing as Willie Mullins Bingo is the name of the race again. I mean, I can't keep up. Ballymore, the Neptune, all sorts. But what is it now? Bearing Bingham, Adam.
It's the Bearing Bingham. I think it was the Neptune the last time I backed a winner in it, but it is the Bearing Bingham.
I think it's one of those where they still haven't got a sponsor. So I think the Bearing Bingham is what it is, if you like. That's its traditional name. And
okay,
whether they will find a sponsor. So Neptune and Ballymore were both sponsors' names, if you like. But I think it used to be the Ballymore, so, registered as the Bearing Bingham, and they've just he's something to do with the inception of the race course. So, but it's only gone to prominence, of course, because they've got no sponsor. So maybe that'll change. We'll be calling it something else. What I hate is the ones that change. The Brown Advisory was the Brown Advisory. Now it's the RSA, and that's not good. I don't like Turner's.
No.
Was the plate, and now it's not, and it's like those are the ones that bother me most. But yeah.
On the actual race, I don't know how you could have a bet in a race which has got so many question marks about who's going to actually run. One, if he does line up, I do like he's reading Tommy wrong, but I do understand maybe it's 60-40 for the Albert Bartlett. But he's getting a lovely patient ride by Darrell last time out. Whether that was by design or not, because his jumping in the early stages wasn't that fluent. So I think he was on the back foot early on, and that kind of like created that patient ride impression. But I do think he's got plenty of improvement in him still to come. So out the Willie Mullins battalion, shall we call him, he would be my idea of the winner, like you say, if and who shows up. But Ballyburn, I understand, is all the rage, isn't he?
Yeah, he seems to be all the rage. He's not all the rage on my anti-post, but I wish he was. But I think it's one of those things that I think Willie also probably knows that lots of other trainers are looking at Willie and going, where are you going to run Ballyburn? And then they're waiting. I heard Henry de Bromhead yesterday say that Slade Steele will probably go wherever Ballyburn doesn't. So Henry is going to need some pretty gutsy entries at 9:50 on that Sunday morning, I think.
That's the point, isn't it? Because obviously now you can only run in one. As you go through the week, the jigsaw puzzles fall into place. So you're dead right. 9:59 on Sunday night, which is the cut-off for we will know, or they will know, the fastest finger first. I don't know whether Willie is going to play ball, and because once you've declared at 9:30, you can't take them back out again. You can until that point. So it'll be interesting to see how late Willie decides to play it and into his horses, because once you're committed to the Supreme from Sunday night, that's where you're going. You can't then into the Bear and Bingham. So it will be interesting to see who comes in late. I'll try and work out where I'm going to be on Monday. Actually, or Sunday night. It might be quite a good idea at 10 o'clock in the morning.
I just have this feeling of Willie. I can almost imagine he's sitting there with Patrick having a laugh at 9:58 and going, "Oh, go on, push the button." We shall see. Now we move on 40 minutes later to a race where Willie looks to have made a decision, and that's the Brown Advisory Novices Chase. It looks fairly certain, certainly if you believe the exchange markets, that Factor Farley's coming here. He's the evens favourite. Can he be beaten, Richard?
He's got a good adversary in Stay Away Faye. So yeah, I think the question for this race and actually the Champion Chase as well, they're quite similar in the sense you've got a short price favourite and a reasonable second favourite. I don't like Grey Dawning in any race, actually. Personal view. Don't think those form lines are quite as strong as they look. And as a result, it does look a match between the two. Question, I suppose, is if you're looking at even money Factor File, 3-1 Stay Away Faye, are you looking at what's more likely, Factor File to win half the time or Stay Away Faye to win a quarter of the time? I do like the fact Stay Away Faye moved out of novice company. Even though he got beat, I just think that's the sort of thing that sharpens up your jumping. My concern is that we're still on the sharp track on day 2, sharper track, and it's 3 miles rather than extended. And you just feel that the cruising speed Factor File showed in that match, the sectional times were really quick for a 2-horse race. Might just mean he's got more toe than Stay Away Faye. Albert Bartlett horses really need to stay. In a Gold Cup next year, that might be different. New course, 3.25 miles, but they've probably got these the right way round, but not by much. I wouldn't suggest that one was a certainty over the other. Good race, nice Anglo-Irish clash.
Joe, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of Stay Away Faye. Like Richard just said, the only negative is the course be better suited to Thursday and Friday, but I just love the way he goes about his business. He jumps, he stays and stays, he fights. He's everything you want from a horse to go in the trenches with, so to speak. I mean, he proved that in the Albert Bartlett last year. It just must be a dream to ride, because he's never going to throw the towel in. When you want to throw him at a fence, he's going to deliver. When you want to dig in, he's going to dig in. And like Factor File probably is the most classy out the two, but I just think if he comes and eyeballs him, I think Stay Away Faye will have that, that enough desire to go and win the race. And at 10-3, it's not a bad price at all, really. So yeah, and obviously Harry Cobden, the season he's having, he can win on anything at the minute. So yeah, Stay Away Faye. I'd probably say Paul Nicholls' his best chance of a winner. So yes, I'm all about Stay Away Faye for me.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to the theory that Stay Away Faye is slow, but I do have this sort of notion about him that he's like that sort of classic car that it can do the fast speed, but it takes a long time for him to get going. And when I looked at his race when he ran at Sandown just before Christmas, and actually when they met the match race with Giovinco, a lot was made of the ride on Giovinco and whether they should have committed earlier and things. But from the third last at the pond fence to the line, Stay Away Faye was quicker than the 2 mile chasers. Now you have to allow the 2 mile chase race was won by a horse rated 122. So there's a bit of class in there, but there is some speed. But what I've noticed with him in a lot of races, particularly the Cotswold Chase, as they approach the second last, you think he's going to win. He's still on the bridle. He's really travelling. But then in the space of 10 yards, Capodanno just buries him. And then he goes again when he towards the line. And I think with him, it's a case of he can run fast, but he can't do it quickly. He needs 50 yards. And that's what puts me off, is that on the old course, that there isn't that 50 to 100 yards to really get the revs up. Maybe Harry Cobden would consider front running and just try and really turn this into the slog that it needs to be. He's certainly an interest for me. The other one who really sort of stood out for me at a massive price is Imagine. I've no idea whether he's going to run here at the Turners. He's come out of that dispersal sale, joined Harry Derham. How much work Harry Derham will be able to get into, I'm not sure, but they have said the plan is to go to Cheltenham. I wasn't worried about the defeat last time because he bumped into Spillane's tail, and I felt that race just turned into a speed that he just wasn't capable of. So I'm kind of hoping they go up in trip with him. I think he's quite a talented horse. Fifth in the Martin Pipe last year, reads pretty well. Maybe at 33-1, he's a bit overpriced. And I think he's probably a little bit forgotten because he wasn't quite as big a price as some other ones were at that sale. And it's been slightly overlooked. So we will come to the other Grade 1 chase on the card, the Champion Chase, for which El Fabiolo is a 1-2 favourite. So Richard, I'll come to you. Are you prepared to forgive John Bon the latest run? Or is this a straightforward Willie Mullins chance?
No, I am prepared to give John Bon a run, largely because you can put it down to the fencing. And that hasn't historically been an issue for John Bon. So it is the sort of thing you can go away and sort. And I'm sure he's been well schooled. More concerning might have been how hard he had to work to win. But historically, John Bon, he wasn't that impressed when he went to Warwick and beat Calico in that 2-horse race. And that sort of time of year hasn't always been great for him. Now, Nicky's been a little bit quiet. You'd like to see a few of them run better between now and the festival. I'm just really basing it on the fact that over their career histories, if you took out the recency run, in terms of one poor run for John Bon, they've been relatively closely matched. El Fabiolo was on top last year, and I would have him as favourite. But he himself isn't always the prettiest over a fence. And I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that John Bon jumps a lot worse than El Fabiolo. And that then makes it a lot more even based on, their novice hurdle form when John Bon only just beat El Fabiolo. But historically, they've been quite close together. And I think this is one where the divergence of price is too great. Where the water has been muddied, well, 2 horses. I don't think Fernie Hollow will go anywhere. But, I hope this was a straight match. And I was more than happy to back John Bon 4-1, 6-runner field. He finished second to El Fabiolo anyway, so it's hopefully an each way bet to almost nothing. And then Edwardstone re-emerged on the scene. Fernie Hollow popped up. And I don't know what they're going to do with Edwardstone. It's a very un-Alan King-like way to make the running. Honestly, it's not a scenario that I associate with that yard at all. But as it's worked, dare you do anything different now? I don't know. I just think he'll set it up for the other two. But this is one I'm prepared to. This is my stay away fade, Joe. It's your sort of reverse. You're betting a better price about a horse that I think has a reasonable chance in John Bon.
Joe, are you team John Bon?
I'm not. I'm El Fabiolo. It's a bit of roles reversal, Richard, in this race and the last race. Like you say, he's probably not a better jumper than John Bon at all. They've both got mistakes in them. The thing with El Fabiolo, it reminds you of. Do you remember the way Shotgun Paddy used to take offence in that Warwick Classic chase? You literally just used to plough through the top of them, but it never used to stop momentum. So you can. El Fabiolo seems to be exactly the same as that. He can make a mistake, but it doesn't seem to stop him. He's a big tank of a horse. I just think he's got John Bon's number. There's something about John Bon I've never really taken to. Very talented horse, obviously well related, trained by one of the best. I don't know. I just think El Fabiolo's got his number and got his number comfortably as a chaser. The best of the rest, like Edwardstone's threw his name into the hat, and it makes it very, very interesting if he goes from the front again. They've got to go from the front, like Richard says. If they revert back to the other tactics, then there's no point running. Can I see anything else getting involved? Probably not. So if you're a forecast punter, I'm not. I think the El Fabiolo John Bon forecast is pretty much, what would it pay? Adam, do you know?
Oh, let's imagine they go off 1 to 200 for 30, big percentage of the market. You might get lucky and get 3 out of that as a forecast at a push.
Yeah. If that's the way people, there's a lot of forecast punters out there, that's not a bad little bet. But El Fabiolo for me, I think he's a rock solid favourite.
I would be in the El Fabiolo camp. Edwardstone, that was impressive at Newbury, but I just wonder if they looked at the race once Editor de Gique came out and thought, let's just throw him in front, because I don't know, on the bare form, Boot Hill didn't finish, Amarillo Sky was coming back off a break and didn't finish, and Fernando Silva finished 10 minutes before the following race started. So it's kind of like there's a bit of a hole in that. I guess the other problem for Edwardstone is even if they wanted to front run, if Editor de Gite is on a going day, I don't think Edwardstone could live with him. I think that early pace that Editor de Gite shows would be enough for Edwardstone to have to take a lead. And even if he got up sides, I think the two of them would just set it up. I think Captain Guinness is being a little bit overlooked. But the problem is, for me, Captain Guinness, I think, has had 12, 13 goes in grade ones. He hasn't won one. He's not going to win one now. So he is that kind of, on the day, I'm not sure I'd want the forecast. I don't trust John Bond enough to want to put him in a forecast. But I might be tempted to think Captain Guinness is going to get one of those very special, quiet rides. Probably Rachel would imagine, just like we're not here to win. He finished second last year in a very similar. Don't you dare go anywhere near an Ergamine. You just sit there and you ride for second. And if he got that ride again, what I quite like with these championship races when you get an odds-on favourite is you can find enormous value if you want to go place only or in the forecast. So maybe I'll be tempted by Captain Guinness, but I would personally make John Bond at least sixes. So
it's a shame an Ergamine's not back to go three in
Yeah.
a row. That would have added a real extra ingredient to the race, wouldn't it?
It would have done. It would have done. So we're going to move from the Champion Chase to my favourite race of the festival, which is the Triumph Hurdle. You spend all year watching French racing. No one gives a monkeys about what you think until it comes to Cheltenham season. And then it's, oh, can you tell me about this 3-year-old, Adam? I really need to know what's going to win the Triumph. And luckily this year, the blog in August is absolutely packed full. We've got the first two in the betting. So Gino is obviously shade of odds on. We've got Carguess in there. We've got Madgeborough. Richard, how do you see the Triumph Hurdle going?
Yeah, this race, as you've no doubt covered in the past, it's changed complexion quite a lot with the advent of the Boodles of the Fred Winter, and that's even more so, I think, when you get a short-priced favourite, because there'll be plenty who might now be considering carrying weight in the Boodles rather than cross swords with Sugino. A little bit of the angle went with Burdett Road coming out because I've never been. I think Burdett Road is a flat horse that jumps capably, and at the beginning of the season, Aintree would definitely have been where I'd have been sending him. So as a result, that's the only slight query in my mind about Sugino, just that he beat Burdett Road. Milantino is going to have a real good chance in the Boodles back in third, but he is a big, physically imposing horse. His jumping had improved massively since when we saw him at Kempton. I don't know what his French jumping technique was like, but yeah, he just looked a really good horse, and nothing emerged out of the traditionally good, strong Irish Challenge. I didn't think they were in a heat. Madgeborough is definitely the most interesting horse going forward, but it's very easy when a horse finishes off, isn't it? An experience to say, oh, next time they'll be better. I think Madgeborough will be a good horse in time, but it might just be time in terms of filling out that frame. Now, this is a favourite that I'm with. Would I chase the prizes and back him? No, but he's not one I'm looking to take on, really.
Joe, any thoughts on the Triumph?
Yeah, I'm with Richard. As Chappell would say, this horse is a machine, and that's his favourite word, isn't it? Kempton on debut's turn of foot was just electric, and his jumping was so bad, but he still managed by half the track. And then at Cheltenham, his jumping was improved. Wasn't perfect, but it was chalk and cheese compared to Kempton. And just the way Nico can just give him a little tap down the shoulder, and away he goes. I think he's got the fastest finishing furlong at Cheltenham this season. Is that right? They do an awards thing, don't they? So yeah, I can't see him being beat at all. You can probably tell us more, Adam. There's always a few little Mullins lurkers who, like, I think don't run for him all season, and then they end some here. I think was it Houghton Claus finished third on debut for Mullins in the race. He's got one in here called Anza Damazi for Donnelly's. Like I say, I think Sergina would, I say definitely, because no horse is definitely going to win, but he's as good as the week's banker. But tell us more about the other ones, Adam.
Oh, here we go. So Gino is I mean, actually, his jumping in the pre-wild Monaco or Toy was pretty flawless it's a newcomers race. So you spend a lot of time watching that race, and half of them aren't ready or they're a bit immature. I mean, if you were to compare him, everyone talks about Salvatore Mundi and how closely matched they are, but Salvatore Mundi in that pre-wild Monarch, how he finished second, It's a miracle. This horse has got a hell of an engine because he was off the bridle from a long way out. Then he came back onto it. Then he made a couple of mistakes. But what stands Sergino apart, I watched every race at Auteuil 10 times. And that stand side rail is the worst bias in jumps racing. No matter what they do, if you get the stand side rail at Auteuil, you win. And as they get to the second last, Salvatore Mundi's on terms and he's got that rail. And Sergino just goes again and he's 5 whips out and he finds and he beats him 2.5 lengths. I mean, at Kempton, I was a bit underwhelmed, but I wonder if at Kempton it was just he was against vastly inferior opposition. And it was just the mistake where he left his 2 hind legs in the one in the straight just looked a sort of a lazy. Nico probably could have really thrown him at it and he'd have got over it. And then he's battered Burdett Road. The only thing I would say is Burdett Road clearly didn't run to form. And I can say that accurately because Melantino is third. I love Melantino, but he's quite slow. And he always runs to 130. And on my own rating system I use in France, both runs are about 130. Both runs here have been about 130. Burdett Road was 7 lengths in front of him in November. He was barely 2 lengths in front of him in January. Now, part of that, I think, was also Burdett Road raced towards the inside in the home straight at Cheltenham. And on the new course, you've got to be on the outside rail. And I think you can maybe make excuses, but Sergino is pretty bomb-proof. I still haven't...
Where do you see...
Go on.
Or where do you see Sergino's future?
Chasing.
Over hurdles or chasing?
He's got to go chasing because what are they going to do with him as a 5-year-old? Bump his head against Constitution Hill? The danger for Nicky is the only way he would go hurdling is if Nicky came out in September and said, we're going where Constitution Hill doesn't. Because I think if you ran Sergino with a champion hurdle campaign, you'd risk bottoming him out, as so many 5-year-olds do. I just think chasing. Gino's starting to emerge as a good sire in terms of some chases in France as well. But I just think with this race, like I was looking forward to the DRF so much because I thought Carguess is the thing. I think she's wonderful filly. And although she won the race and she made a mistake at the last and was probably value for it, I'm coming to the opinion that this wasn't the strongest race because at the second last, you've got 6 or 7 could win it. And I think what was most notable for me was the first 2 in that race were Carguess, who's got loads of experience over hurdles. She was a grade 3 winner in France, and Storm Hart, who had 5 runs on the flat before he joined Willie Mullins. And I think race experience got them there. Madgeborough will improve, but I agree with Richard. I think this might all happen a bit soon for him. And then you've got these other 2 Willie Mullins things that are just sort of hovering. The first is Salvatore Mundi. Everyone talks about him. Well, they're only ever going to run him in a grade 1 now because he's still a novice. So the only races I can see Willie even risking him for say, well, we'll either win a grade 1 or we'll keep our novice status. So they might run him here. They might run him at Punchestown. But there is one at like a very throwaway, if he lines up on the day, I'll have a couple of quid. And that's Amsterdam. He's also in the Donnelly's colours. Amsterdam is a 2-time winner. He won at Bordeaux in September in a race that's worked out quite well. And then he won at Compiègne in October and it was breathtaking. This thing tanked through this race. The form's relatively strong. Racing Post ratings gave him 105 for both runs, which I think is just wildly, it's all over the place. He should be closer to a 135 for that second run. The time's really good. He never comes off the bridle. It was an absolutely brilliant display. But the fact that he's not a novice would suggest to me that what are they waiting for? He's got nothing to lose whatsoever. He's not going to go novice hurdling. He doesn't strike me as the kind of horse they go 4-year-old chasing with. They might well be tempted just to throw him in. But I think he's got a lot more experience than people give him credit for. But the fact he hasn't run for Willie yet and he's still in the Triumph, on the day, he's going to be 16s. I don't think he's good enough to beat Sergino by any means, but he's the kind of horse who travels really well. I think he might run into a place. Do I want to take 20 to 1 when I don't think the win bet has got any chance? Probably not, but he might be one of those that I'll sort of throw in a forecast, tricast. I mean, to me, I think Sergino to beat Carguess is probably my strongest forecast bet of the week. I love a good forecast, and this just, Sergino is the best. Carguess getting £7 is the second best, and then it's sort of throw Willie's 6 other balls up in the air and see what lands for third, but we shall see.
Do you think, are you surprised they didn't get extra run into Amsterdam to give the option of the Fred Winter? I mean, obviously it's too late now, but would that at any stage just suggest that maybe things hadn't gone exactly according to plan? Because it was joined Willie early Jan. There was enough time to get a third one in.
There was. I can only, I mean, I assume he was bought on the strength of the Compien run.
Hmm.
In my head, I keep like lists of what'll be Triumph horses, what'll be Boodles. Melantino, I thought would be in the Triumph, so we can cross that breeze in the Boodles. I mean, I thought Amsterdam was primed to run in that race at the DRF, finish 6th, and get a nice mark in the sort of 120s, low 130s. So the fact they didn't would suggest to me, I guess, that something may wasn't right. They felt he wanted a bit more time. I mean, where he's unusual as a French 3-year-old in this model is that he didn't run in the spring at all. He only made his debut on the 17th of September. Arnold Shai is very shrewd. And if he's got a 3-year-old that he thinks he's going to win a race and he can sell it, it will go to somewhere like Bordeaux. It won't go to Auteuil. It will go to Bordeaux because they'll find the race a bit easier. He tanked through that race. He went to Compiègne, won it really easily. I mean, if different days, if you compare him and Caleb de Burley, their time figures and speed ratings I've got are very similar for that Compiègne form. So I was a little bit surprised. In my head, I was kind of thinking, I'm going to be one of those shrewds here and wait for him to be declared for the DRF, and then I'll go and get a Boodles prize because the handicapper won't be able to give him a mark for finishing 6th, but he hasn't done. But I just think the fact he's a winner makes him interesting. And I just wonder if here, or maybe even later on, maybe look at Fairy House. He's won races. He's not a novice. They've got to throw him somewhere, would be my sort of thought. But as I said right now, I mean, if the French have yet again bred the Triumph Hurdle winner, in my opinion, it's just a case of finding which one of the first 8 in the betting, I think it is, that will win it. So we'll move on to your favourite race, Richard, which is the Gold Cup. We've got another odds-on favourite in Galopin Des Champs. Can he be beaten?
He can, but he has certainly enhanced his credentials in the second half of this season. And his defeat, it's quite hard to work out how fast or slow, based on the last couple of runs, plots any sort of revenge. Funny if the podcast have just come off, had JJ Slevin on, and he was talking about riding his own race and wanting a nice consistent pace, but there's nothing there where they're saying, actually, I can get him up under pressure, or I can get him. The first up run wasn't as bad as it looked because of the distance, really, and he jumped sluggishly. Combination of those two sort of had him beaten, but the last couple have been much better. He's jumped soundly. You could argue things didn't go quite according to plan and get shuffled back a little far last year. There's not that many that have enhanced their credentials. I'm not a Shishkin fan at all, so that takes a section of the market out. I'm not left with much running for me if I want to take on Galopin Des Champs. In a way, I just hope he's really good. I hope he becomes a back-to-back Gold Cup winner. They're not that common. I know Albin Photo managed it, but this one could be good. And yeah, he's cemented his case, I think, at the top of the tree. Not too many have emerged, really, to come and challenge. If you're looking at Fast or Slow being second favourite, same form line, it's not great. So in a way, I hope he puts up a championship performance, because the Gold Cup, sometimes correctly, in my opinion, can leave a mark. We chatted about Denman, weren't we? That Gold Cup, you walked away from that thinking he had Corto Star's measure. In a way, the beauty of Corto Star was the fact that he's still the only horse to regain it, but he was capable of taking a defeat and coming out and winning again, whereas it actually broke Denman more than it broke Corto Star. So yeah, I hope he wins. It's not a race I'll have a lot of betting involvement, but back-to-back Gold Cups would be nice. I think he's the best chaser in the country, or around at the moment.
Absolutely, and I think it's sometimes overlooked that things didn't go his way last year in the Gold Cup. A lot, and Paul Nicholls can rattle the sabre all he wants, but Brave Man's Game had it easier than Galopin Des Champs, and he couldn't beat him. So I'm not interested in reversing the form. Joe, are you with the favourite, or you going to try?
No, I'm really looking forward to this race. But going through them from Brave Man's Game down, Brave Man's Game obviously ran a crack last year. He's a big price this year. Like they said, they might ride him. They used a lot of petrol up, they reckon, like going from the front, but they said they might not do that this year. But you're taking away what makes Brave Man's Game good at attacking fences and stuff like that. You don't do that, you're weakening him, in my opinion. So it's kind of like it's catch-22 from that point of view. I can see him run into a place, a big price, but if he didn't beat him last year, likely he's not going to do it this year. Le Homme Presse, I'm not sure. I think that run last time out can't put pay to his chances, even though you can forgive bounce factor and all that. But he won't be one for me. Jerry Colomb, I just don't think he's. I know it sounds stupid, but I don't think he's quick enough. Fast or slow, very good horse. Gentleman's Game, a big price. He's the lurker, kind of, so to speak. He's very lightly raced, isn't he, compared to the others? So we don't really know how good he is. But everyone knows me. I'm a massive fan of Shishkin. He's becoming a bit of an enigma, isn't he? Will he start? Won't he? They say it's never going to happen again. I don't know what you think, Richard, but he still screams to me he needs cheek pieces.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean,
Which
that was yeah. My issue for him, to be honest, Joe, is not so much him refusing to race at Ascot, but just the fact that he looked to be moody in the run right from the word go last year. You know,
yeah.
in the Queen Mother. I mean, it's one of those when you're commentating, you're thinking if this was a normal horse, you would be saying he's not travelling from the word go, but you're thinking, God, it's Shishkin, and you know you don't want to damn a superstar if he just warms up and wins 15 lengths. You're going to look really stupid. It's one of those rare things you should just concentrate on what you're seeing. When you watch it back, he genuinely was beaten going to the second or third, and even though he ran down a Hoiles and you're at Aintree, and everyone said, "Oh, it's the trip," it just made me think he was a sulky little thing. They were saving enough, and that enabled him to stay. And I'm just a hard forgiver of those. I give myself an uppercut if I back one of those and they spit the dummy, thinking, well, it was blooming obvious, and you know. But he, you know, with that angle, I wanted to take him on with Protectorat, although why they rode Protectorat forward, I still don't understand why they're doing that with him. He's got nothing left to offer. So that was a frustration because I wanted him just to track Shishkin and try and do him for foot. He set it up perfectly for Shishkin on the day, but Nicky was, you know, what's he done wrong? Thinking, well, hang on a second, Nicky. He didn't start at Ascot. He'd spat the dummy at Cheltenham. You know, he's done a fair bit wrong. He's a very talented horse, and it would be a great result. But yeah, would I part my money with him? No, I wouldn't. It's just not my sort of
I've got a bit of a. I love him. Like even Kempton was heartbreaking. That was just a very unlucky one of them things, wasn't it? Like you say, in the Ryanair last year as well. His jumping was terrible in the first half of the race. How he finished so close as he was is credit to the horse, because I think with Shishkin in the Gold Cup, the first circuit is going to be. I think I spoke to you about Adam before. The first circuit with Shishkin in the Gold Cup is key. You'd know from the off, and you'll know from your position up in the commentator box if he's on a going day or not. If he's there on the turn for home, it's going to take a good one to beat him. I think. I don't know. I'm not comparing Sprinter Sacra and Undersow Champion Chase to this race, but I always felt if Sprinter Sacra could get up to Undersow and eyeball him, see what he's made of, then we'll see the race. And it's a similar scenario here. If Shishkin can get upside, scallop into Champs and eyeball him, and then from there it's the best horse wins. But yeah, I think he could shock a few people with Shishkin. Or maybe I'm talking nonsense. But
no, he's a Marmite horse now, isn't he? You know, as you say, you know, I can fully understand those that sort of, you know, lovable old rogue type approach, but I just struggle to part with me money on a lovable old rogue in that sort of sense, because I think he just might be an old rogue and not too lovable. But you know, as I fully accept that he can win. I'm genuinely not saying that. It just I'm not a forgiver of, you know, I've seen something that I think his attitude. I tend to just feel that you've got to be good plus 10%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, if you're saving that for yourself, and can you do that in a real top class Gold Cup? You couldn't do it, as you said, in the Ryanair. He spat the dummy in, you know, the year before. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm hopeful he's going to run better, because my lad Teddy loves him, and he actually came out of school and come to the Champion Chase when he pulled up. And obviously that didn't end well. So if I bring him to the Gold Cup and he does the same again or just similar, I think he'd fall in out with Shishkin for life.
We should bring Adam in as judge and jury here, Adam. Which
side you? Yeah, I don't want to upset Teddy, but I've got to pick with Richard on this one, Joe.
I knew you were, yeah.
He's a bit moody. I mean, for me, the thing is, all right, I know we all know he's got his own ideas about the game, and on his day he's brilliant. And you know that Joe and I were there that day at Ascot, which was just magic when he beat an Ergamine. But I think Shishkin's bottle for the game was left on that straight at Ascot, because ever since there's been this thing of will he start? Then and I just think he's jumping. I even at Newbury, I mean, I'm not convinced that Hitman is anything whatsoever. and Hitman was travelling all over him. Now we all know what Hitman is. He wouldn't, he wouldn't go by anything, so it doesn't really matter. But at the same time, I just look at Shishkin's form. Ignore how he jumps. Just look at his form. Last year, couldn't get the better of Envoy Allen in the Ryanair. What price would Envoy Allen be in this Gold Cup? 25s, 33s minimum. And I just think Shishkin's a year older. I haven't seen anything. None of the horses that Shishkin has beaten this season would be within 50 lengths of Galopin de Champs at his best. And for that reason, I can't really make a case for Shishkin. I think the King George form is worth very little. Allaho isn't himself, he's injured, he's out. Brave Man's Game, I don't think he's quite got the minerals in a battle. And as much as we all love Hewick, and my goodness, what a story that would be if an €800 horse wins the Cup. Hewick, when I compare Hewick to the time of Ile Francais, it's like watching a Class 3 handicapper against a Grade 1. So how can I really think that form is enough for Shishkin to win a Gold Cup? I don't want to make you cry, Joe, so I'll stop. What I will say is, having said I don't want to back that rogue for the Gold Cup, there is a bit of a rogue that I quite fancy, and that's Correct Rambler. He's also got his own ideas about the game, especially when he gets in front. And it's one of those bets that I'm having in my head, because I think Correct Rambler can run to about 168 to 170. And I think this kind of test is what he wants, because they're going to go at such a pace that he won't have time to think. He's just got to go. He's just got to keep going. He travels really strongly. I mean, he's won the Ultimate twice, won the Grand National. Those races are nowhere near the level required to win a Gold Cup. But what they do prove is that when he hasn't got time to think about it, and when he's in a really competitive race, he puts in his best performances. Now, my biggest worry would be, I don't want him to be anywhere near the front until the last 50 yards, because I just worry with him when he hits the front, the old head goes up in the air, and I'm sitting nervously hovering, trying to get out at 1.12 in running and all that kind of stuff. So, whether he's good enough to win, I'm not sure. But I think I can just ignore that form before Christmas. He wasn't fit at all at Kelso. The run in the Betfair was never going to suit him. He's a better horse in the spring. He's worth a roll of the dice in this. I think this race isn't as deep as people think. The Fav is a good thing. I certainly wouldn't lay him at even money or 10 to 11, but I can kind of make a squeak for Correct Rambler staying really well.
Yeah. I can sort of see that. I mean, after all, who did he beat in the Ultimate last year?
Exactly.
Fast or Slow, who's popped up as second, obviously Fast or Slow, as a backer of Fast or Slow last year, it's one of those where you just keep scratching your head when he goes out and wins a Grade 1. And you think that was a fluke at the back end of the season. Then, of course, he comes out and does it again. But that's right. I mean, you can look through the lines and think Correct Rambler is suited by the tempos of festival races, which are different, as we said. They tend to be attritional, particularly Gold Cup. So no, I can sort of see that. Lucinda's horses have been Lucinda struck me this year as a yard that struggled with the extra numbers. I don't know whether that's fair or not, but they're a little bit stuck out. They would require quite a change to work riders and to assimilate that number of horses. And there's a few that have had campaigns which I think, had you said that's what they were going to do at the beginning of the season to them, Hoiles would be an obvious candidate, and then the way he was ridden at Ascot as well, just to compound it. So maybe they will bounce back. Long Pressé, the only thing I'd say about Long Pressé, Joe, is that Venetia's horses, and I don't think it was her plan. I think the owner likes to run them once they're right, and I don't think that running it prized his chance. The only thing I would say was Venetia was having a torrid time around that time.
Didn't she?
Yeah, she's had a couple. She had a horse run second with me today, and she's had a winner. But there was a week or two where I was calling her horses. They were beaten after 3 fences. Alice Shishkin and the Queen Mother. And they ran really, really poorly. I think at one stage in February, until the last couple of days, her percentage of runners beaten was 28, which is astonishingly low for a major stable. When you think about you're going to war, obviously, with horses that are often better than the smaller stables, you'd expect to finish in front of them. So that's the only thing in the back of my mind about Long Pressé.
Would the ground warrior with Long Pressé?
Maybe at the trip, yeah, if it became, and also you just feel a horse that's had issues down the years, you certainly wouldn't want it quick, but you certainly wouldn't want it to be an absolute slog.
No.
No,
it's fascinating. It's a fascinating race, isn't it? Everyone's got, apart from maybe the favourite, obviously is favourite for a reason, but they've all got question marks, haven't they? But they've all got their own chance in their own way, if that makes sense.
The only thing I'd say about all Grade 1 races, and Cheltenham's a case in point, is that the difference between and why you do get some big price winners of Grade 1 races is they are all capable of taking advantage if everything falls their way. Whereas if you call a Class 5 race at Wetherby or something like that, some of them you could present it to them on an absolute plate and they still wouldn't be capable of winning, either through attitude or just ability. Whereas when you get a Grade 1, when you think about, it wasn't a Group 1, but you think about the Quickthorn, for example, at Goodwood, horses that slip the field and they let them go too far and the track position just becomes too great because they can still keep running. They're good enough to do that. And I remember going to Hong Kong and the largest price winner of all time at that stage was the winner of the Hong Kong Derby. It was called Holy Grail. He won 173 to 1. Everyone's I'm thinking, well, no, actually, I'd be more surprised if it was a Class 6 winner 173 to 1 than I would about horse in the Hong Kong Derby, because this horse didn't have Class 1. He took the absolute run of the race, and that's the same as you're saying, Joe, to be honest, and you, Adam, if it runs, they go real quick, and Coric Ram's a real player. If they go real slow, he probably isn't, know.
Yeah, it's one of those races, I think, where every punter will know their fate with 3 fences to go. I think we'll all know if we've taken on the favourite, whether we should have done or not. And probably in my head, I just think probably I should just be lumping on this thing at 10 to 11 and that'll do. But, I can't, it's not in my nature to do it. So I've got to try and get him beat, but he looks bulletproof. So I know we haven't discussed the handicappers today, Richard, but can you give us one in a handicap that you fancy for the festival?
Well, I'll give you a couple. My age-old favourite horse, who I was prepared to abandon this year on the grounds that he's 12, but Mill Green, each way in the Pertemps. What a horse he is. He's finished third, I think, at both Cheltenham and Aintree in those 25-21 runner races. And last year, just sat on him a final 50 for another 50 yards, and he would have gone really, really close. And then he flashed up with me at Exeter, and I'm thinking, I'm going to back you again, aren't I? Because you've shown at 12 you're not a back number. The Pertemps in theory is weaker this year with the 4 qualifiers, like last year, and doesn't have the same depth. Is there an Irish smoky in there? Probably. I believe they're going to run Springwell Bay in that as well, which I'm really disappointed about because I think he's a Coral Cup horse. I like him a lot. I don't want him coming and doing Mill Green. It would break my heart, but I'm told he is going there, despite the fact I thought Musselbury didn't quite get home, and he didn't quite get home that day at Cheltenham when Headkeeper got run down by that thing, Butch, wasn't it? I think it was. I'm not sure it was Butch, but anyway, it was. That I thought was going to be a strong line of form, and wasn't. So yeah, Mill Green will definitely be one of them. An interesting horse that's appeared in the entries, which I need to investigate further, was a horse I thought was being readied for a chase, Petit Tonnerre, who finished 7th in the county hurdle last year. And I thought his fencing would improve once he got handicapped. That was my logic after he'd had the requisite 3 runs to qualify. And they backed him at Musselburgh and he hung in the air again. And I think they'd given up. But he's well treated in the county. Same mark as last year. Watch that run back last year. He's the one going past the line that has a little bit of petrol left. Now, it's been a long time since he's shown, but if he went off 33 to 1 or something in the county off the back of that, I mean, I can think of at least 2 or 3 seemingly JP 3rd or 4th strings that have popped up at far bigger prices. So Petit Tonnerre and Mill Green amongst the handicappers. Doddy the Great in the Coral Cup. Nicky's touting him and shouting him from the rooftops, so there goes probably the value, but he shaped in the Betfair hurdle like a horse that I thought was wanting 2.5 miles. Imposed Trois, who's also in the county. Colonel Mustard's going to go for the champion hurdle, so he's not in that. But yeah, there are a couple, but it will be Mill Green, I think, who probably is the most interesting one for me in the Pertemps.
Okay, Joe, got a handicapper to add for us tonight?
Have a look. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Pertemps. I was kind of hoping that Good Time Johnny was going to get himself qualified again because they entered him on Sunday, didn't they, in that final qualifying. I thought, oh, here we go. Run him over fences all season, put him in the old Pertemps qualifier, get him qualified for back-to-back. But no, I think Gabby's Cross is interesting in the Pertemps. Again, been chasing for the last 2 seasons, ran the Leinster National, ran in the actual Grand National and then seated at the 15th. Was 12th in the Galway Plate, and then 7th in the Kerry National. So he's been around the clock. Back herd in October. I think that was more of a prep run for maybe another chase down the line, but he ran that well into second place, and I think it kind of rejuvenated him. So that, hey, let's get him in the attempts could be on the radar here. So they put him in a qualifier. Second, beaten only a length and a half. Perfect ride by Rachel. She possibly could have won. I don't think she asked for full. She went for everything. It was just a lovely ride. 133 being given by the handicapper over here. Chase marks 140. So perfectly capable of running well above 133 in my opinion. So yeah, Gabby's Cross, I think you could possibly get 16s for the per temps. Obviously, probably the hardest handicap of the week to nail, Richard, and we've both chose this race to.
Yeah, I mean, you could add Highland in as well as another one who, he probably wants a bit dry ground, but he shaped okay under, what was an inadequate trip on his comeback run as well. So yeah, that's why I was dropping off Mill Green, but same mark, I mean, £1 higher, I think. Turns up with 138, 139, 140 and just runs bomb-proof races in those big handicaps. And he's 12 now, so it might be a year too far. But yeah, he's in the price at 25s again.
Well, I have to say that the race I've enjoyed most in the last couple of weeks was that final Patents qualifier in Ireland at Naas, because the race for fourth place was magic. As 4 or 5 jockeys realised they're all looking at each other, who's going better? Am I going to squeak in? And the one who comes up the rail, you can almost see the jockey like, yes, I'm in. There we go. But I can't touch the Patents. That just it's made it harder for me. When there were 6, at least I could spot the plot jobs nice and easily because they were just put in. But I will have a little swing in a handicap, and I'll go to the Boodles, which is kind of my cup of tea. Lots of French form in here, which will do me. This thing with Melantino is frying my brain. I can't. They gave him 136 based on his French form. Then he's had 2 runs over here, and they've gone, well, we'll ignore all the French form and make him a 126 horse. I don't really understand how that is. But, I'm sure JP McManus must have thought, well, that'll do us. Whether he's good enough, I'm not sure. He's a wonderful horse. He's got brilliant form. He was 4 lengths behind Jigme, who has now gone off the stud, but he was a superstar 3-year-old last year. But I just worry with Melantino if he's quick enough. And I think a race like this, you've got to have a turn of foot to keep yourself in the right position. So the one I'll go with is an unusual approach to the Boodles. It's a Paul Nicholls horse called Liari, owned by Neil and Alfie Smith. 3 from 3s by Cracksman, so there's not a lot to really go on, but his French form on the flat was pretty good. He ran to sort of a mark of around 85 to 90. He's won at Wincanton. He won at Aintree in December, and I thought, well, that's his season over because the weather that day and the ground was horrific. And I thought that'll leave a mark, but he came out and won at Musselburgh for his 3rd run. To be honest, I was shouting at the telly saying, Harry, slow down, son, slow down. He can't win for the Scottish Triumph by 5 lengths. He's paid a little bit for that. He's got a mark of 134. I'm worried that they've shown their hand, and there's clearly any one of 7 Irish trained horses in here who have been carefully campaigned, shall we say. So I'm a little bit worried. But what I do like about Liari is he's a great big lad. He's got loads of experience. He's had 6 runs, all within the last 12 months. He's taken his racing really well. I think this will really suit him. I think he looks the kind of like Friday night out with the lads. Let's have a bit of rough and tumble in the Boodles. So I think he'll run really well. I thought 12 to 1 underestimated him. Ideally, I'd like something else like Carla Conti to turn up just to keep a little bit of weight off his back, because there is a danger if 1 or 2 of those at the head of the weights head off to the Triumph that Liari is going to be shouldering a big weight. But he's a big lad, and I think I'll be shocked if he's not in the first 5 home, and you'll probably get that on the day. So we will ask you one final question, Richard, before we go. We're putting together a lucky 15 for charity for all of our guests, and we're going to ask you for one selection. Now, Jamie Snowden really went out there last night when he said Sir Gino for the Triumph. So if you could possibly find us a little bit more value, we'd really appreciate it.
What sort of prices are we looking at? You just want something that's not quite so short as that?
We'll have anything you like. It can be 100 to 1 shot each way. It can be a 6 to 4 favourite, whatever you think.
Okay, well, I'll go for Galvin in the cross country. Although I'm slightly alarmed that Delta Work, having been easy to back has been stronger in the last day or two. I just sort of think that Gordon's identified this as a race that he can win each year. Tiger Roll had the baton. Delta Works spoiled the party. Galvin was second fiddle last time, but Delta Works that little bit older and hasn't been quite as easy to prep, whereas I just get the impression that's what Galvin's been laid out for. I don't like Manila Indo, and that's why I want to get involved in the race. I didn't see what other people saw with that first run over the cross country. Yeah, he won Albert Bartlett. You know, I know it sounds daft when you run for ages, but they well grouped in that turn of foot down the hill. Galvin is more of a grinder, but he does possess that ability to make a move at the end of a race. And yeah, if Manila Indo wins, I'm wrong, and that makes the market. And I just prefer Galvin to Delta Works. So Galvin in the cross country.
Brilliant. Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving us our time. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you like it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will be back early next week with the jockey Charlotte Jones.